Hello and welcome to the RotoWire WNBA show, where we talk about fantasy basketball. I'm Jason Shebilske alongside Kirien Sprecher, and we are back. Today we'll break down the biggest news to know as the Olympic break comes to an end. We'll also give you the top players to add for the fantasy playoffs. And finally, we'll preview this weekend's games as the WNBA season resumes. Those looking to test RotoWire's full slate of tools can visit rotowire.com/try for a free trial. This gives you access to content across all sports, so even though the WNBA season is winding down, you can check out our NFL and NBA draft tools, as well as our continued coverage for all sports. And if you have any questions during the show, you can ask them in the comments and we'll get them answered. The Olympic break featured plenty of entertaining games, including Team USA winning yet another gold medal by taking down France. However, there's plenty of news to take note of for WNBA purposes, including Satou Sabally returning to action for Germany. Kirien, what impact do you think this will have for the Wings for the final few weeks of the regular season?
Sabally returning during the Olympics is exactly what fantasy managers and Wings fans wanted and needed, right? She was a bit rusty in like the lead up games, the group stage games, but eventually found her footing and had some really nice outings playing her usual style. Normally, I would say like a player coming off an injury like this, yada yada, you got to watch out for minutes restriction. But she like already moved past all of that during the Olympics, so she's full go for this final couple weeks, like you said. Losing Odyssey Sims and Monique Billings hurts the Wings a little bit, in my opinion, though they were playing really well for the shorthanded Dallas squad. Dallas couldn't retain those two players because they were on hardship deals. So even if they wanted to, they brought Jaelyn Brown and Satou Sabally back. So those two players had to be activated because they have regular contracts. And then when you activate them, you have to lose the hardship deals. So that hurts a little bit, but looking at the roster now, it's essentially the same group that made the playoffs last year. So I don't see a reason why Sabally returning and then, returning to full strength, they can't fight for a playoff spot again this year.
Right. This is a really nice thing about the WNBA being just as small as it is, and with having 8 playoff spots for 10 teams. The Wings are still in it, even though they really, really struggled to begin the season. And like you said, I think that there's a chance that Sabally's minutes are monitored a little bit just in case, because she's only played a few games in the Olympics and had a really long layoff. But I think especially with it being a shoulder injury as opposed to like maybe a leg injury or something like that, I think that her conditioning will probably be able to come along more quickly. And especially if they're in close games, Satou will probably find a way to reach another gear when they need her. So I think that it'll be a really nice boost for Dallas. And like you said, as encouraging as it is that the Wings are back to full health, Odyssey Sims and Monique Billings were released Wednesday. They had carved out really prominent roles for Dallas early in the year, and it's possible that they could earn roster spots over the final month of the season, whether it be full-time spots with Dallas or a spot elsewhere. Who do you think could step up now that both of them have been let go?
I think Sabally has to be the main target here. She was the best player on the team and the team needs her to be at her best, to be at their best, right? I think the Wings are going to let their fate be decided by Sabally, Agumbawale, Natasha Howard, Tierra McCowan. Like I said, that same group that led them to a playoff berth last year. So while Dallas was a huge source for streamers in the first half, we talked about it on every show basically. I think fantasy managers probably have to steer in another direction for this final couple weeks, meaning players like Sevgi Uzun and JC Sheldon, who we've praised on the show, are probably best left on the waiver wires at this point because they're just not going to be getting the 25-30 minutes that they were getting in the first half.
Yeah, I think that some of them are probably emergency streamers. Like if you really need someone in a pinch, maybe you can hope that someone can come through with a few fantasy points. But yeah, I think Uzun and Sheldon are probably not rosterable. Maddy, Siegrist, and Jaelyn Brown, who we'll talk about a little bit later, they'll be coming back from injury. I think that they're probably borderline like roster waiver players. So right in that streaming category where they're probably worth rostering, but it's not necessarily like if you're going to drop Maddy Siegrist at this point, I don't think that you're turning too many heads, and I don't think that your fantasy team will be too worse off for it. Whereas she had some periods earlier in the year where she was really productive.
Yeah, you got to imagine that Sabally and Ogunbowale are going to be handling more than half of the playmaking opportunities. So, and then Howard and McCowan are going to grab a lot of the board. So, Siegrist feels like just like if she makes 4 threes one night, you're going to get some rewards from that. But she could also go 1 for 5 and score 3 points with 2 rebounds, and you're like, well, what was that? But yeah, it's difficult. I stream Dallas players as much as I can. I still had Sheldon on one roster during the Olympic break, but like you said, probably best as like emergency options at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. And it feels so long ago at this point, but a blockbuster trade went down in the league just before the All-Star game as Marina Mabrey was traded to the Sun. The Sky tested out several starting lineups in practice as the Olympic break came to an end, but Michaela Onyenwere will have the first opportunity to start. Is she someone that you're targeting in fantasy leagues, or do you expect this to be more of a committee-based approach?
Yeah, I mean, just going back to the beginning of your statement, this feels like so long ago. We were at the airport when this trade went through, and we were just absolutely shocked. Like, it makes sense for Connecticut, obviously. The Sky, not so much. Another, letting her go after letting Kalea Copper go recently, and whatever. That not getting too distracted at this point, but I think this is tough. Onyenwere has made 2 starts this season. On May 23rd in New York, she posted 13 points, 5 rebounds, and a block in 28 minutes during a win over the Liberty. Like, you're like, that's awesome. I'm hoping that that's what she provides as a starter. But then in her other start of the season on June 1st in Indiana, she was held scoreless and played only 8 minutes. Just feels like a dice roll right now. With who's going to get that extra minutes from Mabrey's absence. You also have to look at players like Mariah Jefferson and Rachel Banham, 2 players that came over in the Mabrey trade. They're expected to make their Sky debuts when the season picks back up. Plus, don't forget about Dana Evans. She was working with the starters initially during practices during the Olympic break before Onyenwere started doing that. So it's tough. I think we just kind of have to see what plays out. Isabel Harrison was also putting up she had a couple 20-point fantasy point games right before the break too. So the outside of Chicago's rotation is going to be really weird. And I'm going to talk about Lindsay Allen later in the pickup thing. I think this is a team, obviously, when you trade a player like Mabrey, that opens up so many minutes and so much usage that we want to take advantage of in fantasy. But it's kind of a wait and see approach to see who's really going to be the best targets. One of the other funny things I saw on Twitter during the Olympics was maybe the Sky knew that Gabby Williams is going to go off during the Olympics. And so they made this trade in advance to, start preparing, get some money off the contracts and be willing to snatch that up. Angela Reese made a funny claim. She was trying to recruit, doing her best LeBron James impersonation during the Olympics. But a lot of interesting stuff going on in Chicago for sure.
Yeah, I don't think that anyone would argue that Marina Mabrey is much less than a great player, where it feels like the Sky now have a lot of really good, good to really good backcourt options, I should say. And so I think Onyenwere, she was the Rookie of the Year in 2021, so she definitely has the pedigree to step up. But Mariah Jefferson has shown flashes of promise, so has Rachel Banham, Dana Evans too. So if one of them can really step up and stake their claim in the Sky backcourt, I think that it would especially make their future a lot brighter because right now there are some question marks that will probably be addressed down the road. But I think that the end of the season, even though the Sky are still fighting for a playoff spot, I think that their focus is probably more on looking to see which backcourt options they have right now that can be contributors in future seasons as well.
It's also worth noting I mentioned Jefferson. This will be like her return from an ankle injury too. So not only will she be making her team debut, she will probably be pretty limited after I think she had surgery. It was like an arthroscopic surgery, so she only missed like a month and a half or something. But she should still be really limited. But yeah, there's a lot of minutes to be had. And like I said, we'll talk about Lindsay Allen in just a little bit.
Mhm. And finally, the Mystics will get a boost since Brittney Sykes, Shakira Austin, and Karlie Samuelson will return to action following the Olympic break. How important will all three players be for Washington, and whose role might take a hit?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is absolutely massive for Washington. You're getting a guard back, you're getting a big back, and you're getting a shooter back. Like those are the three things that you look for when you're trying to build a roster. So they get a little bit of everything back. Sykes was actually available in the Beat Kirien Sprecher League. Someone might have dropped her during the Olympic break. I didn't really see what the transactions was, but so if Sykes is available in your league, go snatch her up immediately. I think she's still rostered in like 70%. So it must have just been someone that had two players like that needed to go on IR, maybe had Sabally too, and chose the other one. So if any of those players are available, you should probably go pick them up. Karlie Samuelson, maybe not in smaller leagues, but Austin and Sykes should definitely be rostered. As for the candidates who for reduced roles in Washington, you got to look at rookie Aaliyah Edwards, Julie Vanloo, Misha Hines-Allen, Shatori Walker-Kimbrough, and Emily Engstler. I think Edwards is probably safe, right? She's a rookie on a rebuilding team. She needs those developmental minutes. And then Vanloo is also a rookie, but she's an older rookie. So the developmental minutes aren't really a thing in that case, right? So I think Vanloo and Edwards are probably the safest. And then Hines-Allen was putting up strong fantasy points before the break. But I think ideally Tebow doesn't want to play Hines-Allen a ton of minutes. You want keep her fresh, play that 18, 20 minutes, and maybe if you push for the playoffs, she'll get more minutes. So I think Hines-Allen, Walker-Kimbrough, and Engstler get reduced minutes, and then Edwards and Vanloo get like a little bit but reduced, but they still maintain strong roles. It's just difficult to like roster any of those players that we're starting in Washington that are now going to be reserves.
Yeah, I agree with you basically in every count there. I think Edwards and Vanloo probably still have safe fantasy roles, and if they don't, within a few games, it's very little risk to have them on your roster given their upside. Hines-Allen is probably the player that I would prefer out of like the final three that you mentioned, just because, like we've mentioned in the past, Hines-Allen has shown in the past to be a pretty solid fantasy player, even in past seasons. But like you said, I think that the Mystics will probably want to try and manage her workload a bit. So her upside is probably slightly limited, but I still like her better than Walker Kimbrough and Engstler at this point.
Yeah, and Vanloo was amazing during the Olympics, so I feel like Washington's going to try to ride the hot hand there and see how many more threes she can sink in from prayer threes that she can sink in. So I think we're in agreement there. We don't need to go much further.
Yeah, absolutely. And before we move on, if you enjoy content like this, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. If you needed a reminder to check on your fantasy roster following the Olympic break, let this serve as your reminder to do so. Go in right now, pause the video, check your lineup, make any roster decisions that you need to. But there are definitely some players to add because, as we noted earlier, plenty of situations have changed during the league's month-long layoff. If you have a player whose role is going to decrease over the final month of the regular season, Michaela Onyenwere is an option to pick up. She's rostered in just 7% of ESPN leagues, and she had scored in double figures for fantasy points in 3 of her 4 appearances ahead of the Olympic break, despite coming off the bench for the Sky. Even if the team splits the workload vacated by Marina Mabrey, Onyenwere is a former Rookie of the Year and is worth taking a flyer on given what she has shown in the past.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Like I said before, her 2 starts earlier were mixed bags. But I think like if you have a streaming spot right now, like this is probably one of the best players to pick up at this point. Starting role on a team, I wouldn't say a great team, but they play tough defense. There's a lot of rebounds to be had. There's a lot of steals to be had. So I think it's worth taking a shot on her if you have a streaming spot for sure.
Right. And I wouldn't necessarily say that she's the top waiver pickup that you should be, but I think that she's someone who in deeper leagues that is probably available and you can pick up, where we aren't saying that like if Brittney Sykes or Satou Sabally are available, I would definitely pick up those players. But Onyenwere is someone who's probably available who I think is worth going out and grabbing.
Yeah, for sure. I'm sticking in Chicago. Lindsay Allen, I said it earlier. It looks like Kennedy Carter is going to be fine. She tweaked her ankle during a practice during the Olympic break. But with Mabrey gone, like we mentioned, Allen has a clear path to more usage. She started the final 12 games for the break for Chicago and averaged 6 points, 4.5 assists, 2 rebounds, and a steal in 27 minutes. That those stats don't like jump off the page, but during that stretch, she was doing a little bit of everything, and she attempted double-digit shots only once. When she did attempt double-digit shots, she finished with 13 points, 7 assists, 6 rebounds, 2 blocks, and a steal. So, like, I feel like if she starts getting double-digit shots with Mabrey gone, I think Allen does. She's solid in that starting lineup. Even Mariah Jefferson and Rachel Banham. It'll take a week or two before they start making some real noise. So I think Allen for this next week or two can see double-digit shots a handful of times and provide really solid fantasy production.
Yeah, and it's really encouraging that Allen took on a starting role before the Olympic break. Dana Evans was moved to the bench, and Lindsay Allen stepped up. And Coach Teresa Weatherspoon has sounded really impressed with Allen's leadership when she's on the court. So I think that she will continue to have opportunities, and especially with Mabrey gone, there will be a lot more shot opportunities. So I think Allen is a good player to look at for fantasy purposes.
Yeah, I feel like in the first half, at the end of the first half, right before the Olympic break, she just didn't have a super high upside, right, with everyone else around, and Mabrey taking a lot of the shots out of the backcourt. She was just like a really solid player. She has established herself as a solid player now, and now gets a chance to showcase her upside. So I'm taking a shot on her if I have a guard spot open this week for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. If you need a front court player, this player is a little bit more speculative, but Temi Fagbenle, she missed the final few games before the Olympic break, but Coach Christy Sides recently said that she's close to returning. Fagbenle has been productive whenever she's been on the court this season, so if you're in a deeper league, she could be worth taking a chance on in case she's able to return for the start of the fantasy playoffs next week. She's a player that, if she isn't back next week, she can probably be dropped again. But if you aren't in a tight matchup this week that would decide whether you'd make the playoffs, I think Fagbenle is worth the risk. She and Nelissa Smith have kind of gone back and forth in usage, but even when Fagbenle is a little bit on the shorter end of the stick in terms of that competition for playing time, Fagbenle has usually had enough production to be a solid fantasy player.
Yeah, I think the Fever are going to hit the ground running after this break. Caitlin Clark finally gets some time off. Fagbenle, I've talked about how much I like her game, how much how well she fits with what Clark wants to do offensively, and she's a solid defender. So I'm really excited. I hope that she can get back to full strength and play at the way she was early in the first half last year or of the season. Mm-hmm. I almost said last year. It was just a month. It was just a month ago. The Olympic break really took me for a wild one.
Right. It feels like it's been so long, and now we've got a month left before the WNBA playoffs. So it'll be a fun month, definitely, for basketball.
I'm shifting over to Phoenix. Sophie Cunningham is one of my top streamers for the remainder of this week. There's only 4 days, whatever it is, but the Mercury play 3 times. Given that there's one back-to-back, Diana Taurasi is probably going to have to sit out at least one of those. We just got news before we hopped on the show. Rebecca Allen's going to remain out for a couple of weeks with a hamstring injury she suffered while getting ready for the Olympics. So Cunningham should start and get plenty of usage. She's made 8 starts this year. Not eye-popping numbers in those games. 9 points, 5 rebounds, 2.5 assists, 1 steal. But she did have a 21-point outing against the Fever in a start, and that was one of Phoenix's final game before the break. I don't think she's maintained that hot streak going in, but it shows you that she fits in well with this star-studded Phoenix squad, and she can knock down shots, and she can put up strong fantasy numbers when given the opportunity.
Yeah, and especially since the Mercury had so many players in the Olympics, they had Taurasi, Kalia Copper, and Brittney Griner all on Team USA. So I think that they will probably lean on a few more players to step up, especially with this loaded schedule coming out of the break. That even if both Taurasi and Copper are available, I think that there will just be more opportunities out there for Sophie Cunningham. So I really like that, especially if you are in a tight battle this week for your matchup, and really especially if you need a playoff spot still, like to clinch. I think that this is time for a Hail Mary, and I think Sophie Cunningham is a solid player to do that with.
Definitely.
So for my next additions, I'll make a blanket statement and say basically any of the Wings players who are returning from injury. Satou Sabally is certainly my clear top option. I was shocked when I saw today that she's rostered in just 68.3% of ESPN leagues. Now that she'll be back in action, she's a must roster player with top 10 upside. I was expecting her to have more around like maybe 92%, but that should be really close to 100% right now that she's back. Even if she has a few games where the Wings manage her workload, she at probably about 75% is better than a lot of the players that are out there on waivers. So I think that she is definitely the top player to add this week. And like I said, I think that she'll have just about top 10 upside. I think that before her injury, I had her ranked at number 8 going into the season. So the talent is there, the opportunities should be there, and she's someone to definitely add. Maddy Siegrist is probably my second choice, but she carries some risk with Sabally back in action. Siegrist should still be able to maintain her role, but she's been slightly inconsistent this year, even with the increased opportunities. So she's someone to monitor when Sabally is back in action. Sabally is more of a set it and forget it kind of player, whereas Siegrist is probably worth keeping an eye on, even if you do add her. And then Jaelyn Brown drew some attention heading into the regular season, but she appeared in just one game before missing time. It's not yet clear whether she'll have a prominent role upon her return now that the Wings are closer to full health, but I think she's at least worth taking a chance on in deeper leagues.
Yeah, just going in reverse order with what you did. Brown was getting a lot of attention because Sabally was out, so I'm maybe toning my excitement down from the beginning of the regular season, but I do think she can still play a role. Siegrist, like we said, it's just that's kind of a wait and see thing. And then Sabally, first round potential easily, top 5 potential easily. If you saved her, Jason's been telling you to put her on your IR spot all season. And if you've done that, then you should be very excited for the next couple of weeks for sure. To round out the waiver wire pickups, I'm going with Jordan Horston. She should be rostered in more leagues, still only at 35%. She's the clear 5th starter in Seattle. Victoria Vivians was getting some time early in the season. And it's finally Horston is getting her shot, and she's making the most of it. Over her last 13 appearances before the break, she averaged 10 points, 5 boards, 2.5 assists, 1.7 steals, and nearly a block a game. Does a little bit of everything. Plays well, fits well into, the star-studded cast that they have in Seattle. So Jordan Horston is a solid pickup that is probably available in your league.
Yeah, and the Storm are a team that shouldn't be taking their foot off the gas over the final month of the regular season. They're at 4th right now in the standings, but the team right behind them, the Las Vegas Aces. And if we know anything about the league, is that you shouldn't take the Aces lightly in any way. So if they can stay ahead of Las Vegas, I think that would be beneficial for Seattle. And so I think that they'll definitely be fighting and giving Jordan Horston a lot of opportunities to contribute. Even though the Olympics were exciting, it'll be nice to see the WNBA season pick back up this weekend. What games are you most looking forward to over the next few days?
I mean, obviously, I'm excited to see how Caitlin Clark looks after her first extended break in well over a year, right? She had more time off during the Olympics than she had between the NCAA tournament / WNBA draft coming into this WNBA season. And they've been practicing. Her connection with the front court players is only going to get better. And they're only going to, once the team gels around her, you saw it pick up after they had that grueling start to the season. Really excited to see what Clark can do coming off this break. First matchup is against Diana Taurasi on Thursday. Some juicy Olympic conversations are going to have to be had if and when Clark just completely outperforms Taurasi in this game. Taurasi has 6 gold medals, right? That's going to be tough for any player to break ever. I will say that she was completely out of the rotation by the time the gold medal game rolled around. Clark probably is not going to be beating Taurasi's gold medal record anytime soon, but she's definitely going to be gunning for the rest of the Taurasi's records, right? Taurasi's the GOAT. I don't mean any disrespect. I think that the Clark not making the Olympics is end up being a blessing in disguise anyways for her. It would have been fun, but you're not going to be playing Clark really over Chelsea Gray, Kelsey Plum, Sabrina Ionescu was barely even playing. Come on, folks. Like, I love Clark, but Ionescu is like a better player at this stage in her career. And Ionescu, everyone on Twitter was clamoring for more minutes there. So, all the jokes aside, really looking forward to see Clark back in action. That matchup against Taurasi should be awesome. The Fever also play Seattle on Sunday, which will be two really good playoff tests for the Fever to start this second half of the season. I keep saying second half. It's not really the second half. It's more of like the stretch run, like the final burst. It's just the Olympics made it really weird.
Yeah. After a month off, it's nice to be back in the Caitlin Clark hype show with Kirien Sprecher. But I do agree with you. I think that it will be really exciting to see what Caitlin Clark can do after some rest. She's gotten a little bit more practice with her teammates. I don't think that the Fever had any Olympic players, so they've all been in practice over the last few weeks, and I think that will be really beneficial for them. And I agree. I think that the Mercury and Fever game will be really intriguing. I think that the Caitlin Clark Olympic snub was a little bit overblown by a lot of people, but I do think that there'll maybe be a little bit of a chip on Caitlin Clark's shoulder, just to kind of show Diana Taurasi that even though you are a GOAT in the league and you are an absolute legend, that the new generation can still keep up with the rest of the league. So I think that it'll be a really exciting test. And also with the Fever playing Seattle, I think that it'll be a really good test for whether Seattle is ready. Whether Indiana is ready to really be in that playoff contender conversation, or if they're maybe more looking to pull off an upset that would potentially put them in the playoffs that could see them as a first round exit too.
I just want to be clear. I did say that, when they made the announcement, Arika Gumbawale probably should make it over Clark too. So I'm totally happy with her not making it, but now that she didn't make it, I'm going to make a lot of jokes just because I can.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think that you had really reasonable takes, and I think that there are valid arguments both for and against for Caitlin Clark's inclusion.
What are you excited about for this weekend?
I am really intrigued to see how the Sky look in the post-Marina Mabrey era. This Olympic break really seemed to set Chicago up well for the future, as the team has now gotten back most of the draft picks lost in the trade that actually sent Marina Mabrey to the Sky last year. And Chicago also announced a new practice facility, which I think will make the team a lot more appealing when free agents are considering. That's been something that players have been looking for, and up until now they were practicing at a recreational center in the suburbs. So I think that this will be beneficial. However, in the short term, this team has some question marks. Will Angel Reese and Kennedy Carter be able to handle their increased roles? Will Michaela Onyenwere step up in a starting position? I think, like we said earlier in the show, the talent is still in place for the Sky, but the team definitely has more question marks now than they did a month ago.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to say to all the viewers, I don't think any other WNBA fantasy guys are giving you practice facility updates. All right. So Jason's the GOAT. You got to come to him for all your WNBA fantasy needs. But yeah, like you said, Sky, you got to see what happens. Obviously Angel Reese, Cardoso are now, the de facto franchise faces. And I don't de facto is kind of like a negative term. Like, I think it was trending in that direction anyways. But after Mabrey goes, it's a completely new ship. Everyone has a chance to carve out a role for the end of this season and moving forward, right? It's open auditions in Chicago for sure.
Mm-hmm. And like we said earlier, I think that for fantasy purposes, they'll probably test a few different rotations. So I think that there will be a lot of players who have streaming value, but it'll be hard to predict exactly which player will be able to step up right away.
For sure, and that's why you got to pay attention and watch them so that you can get the inside scoop. The only other thing about this weekend is we just talked for 5-8 minutes about games this weekend, and we didn't even mention the Liberty versus the Aces reigning championship battle. So that's going to be absolutely stellar TV to watch, and both these teams a lot basically it's like a split Team USA team, right? Like Breanna Stewart, Serena Ionescu, and then you got A'ja Wilson, Chelsea Gray, Kelsey Plum were all on Team USA. So they go from being teammates for the last month and a half, and now they're going to duke it out right back into WNBA action, and that should be really fun.
Yeah, I think it just really goes to show with how much talent there is across the board in the WNBA that we were able to talk for several minutes about this exciting weekend and not even talk about the Liberty and Aces. But yeah, I think that it'll be a really good test. And like I said earlier, the Aces right now are somehow at number 5 in the standings with the Liberty at number 1. But I think that this is still anyone's game, and the Aces, I think, will be charging over the second half of the season. So I think that it'll be a really intriguing matchup to watch.
Yeah, I would probably put some money down on the Aces not finishing any lower than 5th in the standings, for sure. But that it's going to be a tough matchup. I think we haven't seen the Vegas line yet. It's probably up already. But that should be essentially a toss-up in my mind, even with their current records.
Yeah, absolutely. And that does it for our first show back. Thank you so much for watching. Now that the fantasy playoffs are about to start, we'll be moving down to 1 show per week starting next week. Next week, we'll be back with you live on Friday at 1 p.m. Central. Be sure to tune in then. Thank you.